Hello, I'm Rebecca Flaherty and today I'm going to be showing you how to use this trailing floral template to make this pattern here. This particular template is one of a set of 6 which you can find in my Etsy store, but if you want to have a go for free, you can find this template here in my freebie library and follow along with that one. This is a more advanced level tutorial, so if you've never made a pattern using the diamond method before, then I suggest checking out this video first as it covers everything in more detail and at a slower pace. So let's get started. So from the gallery screen here, I'm going to open up the template from where I have it stored on my iPad. So I'm going to go to Import and I'm going to find it here, and we'll start with Trailing Floral Template 1. You'll notice that all of these import with a plain white screen. That's because I have the sketch layer turned off. And the reason for that is, believe it or not, when you save things with a white screen instead of things on the screen, it actually makes the file size a little bit smaller. And doing that allows me to include them all as direct download links from Etsy, because they have a 20 megabyte upload limit for each of the items, as opposed to having to give it to you as a download link on a PDF. So that's why these are all like that initially. So turn your sketch layers on. So you'll see it has all of the layers here and the structure that you'll be familiar with if you've ever followed along with one of my pattern tutorials before. These templates though don't have any texture overlays on them, which is probably the biggest difference between this and the other canvases that I sell. So we're going to start drawing in our sketch group here on this sketch diamond layer, and I'm going to start by adding an empty layer above it. If you're using the free template version from my freebie library, yours will look a little bit different to this. You'll have different floral pattern, but you will still have this diamond here. To use the template, you'll need to add a layer above the template layer and then draw a diamond just following over the edges of this one, making sure you go right off the edges. That's very important. You need to go right off the edges. And then once you've got that in place, you're good to follow along with this tutorial. So I'm going to get rid of that one because we have an empty one on this sketch diamond layer already, so we can use this one. I'm going to add an empty layer above this one because I always like to start on an empty layer so that I can move things around before I merge it down with the diamond. So because I've got all of the stems in place here already from this template, I'm not going to bother to resketch those, but what I am going to do is just add some of my own leaf shapes and some of my own floral shapes in here, in the places where I've marked out leaves and the flowers should go. So you can either draw some flowers in freehand in these shapes here, like this, obviously a bit neater than that, or if you've got floral stamp brushes, you can use those. I'm going to use these flower shapes here that come with the canvas, but obviously you can make your own floral stamp brushes, or you can just freehand the flowers in. So I'm going to start with this big daisy shape here, and I'm just going to go and stamp this into all of the black circles here. We don't need to worry about the blue ones, it's just the black ones we need to stamp this in. So let's see what size this comes out. It's just about the right size. So I'm going to stamp this into the middle of all of these. So there's all of my flowers in place. These will eventually get transferred to the edge, but we'll come to that in a bit. And then I'm going to put some buds in the smaller circles. So let's grab this one here for the buds. And I'm going to add this on a new layer as well so that I can transform these around. Let's see what size they come out. Let's make that a bit smaller. And then I've got this on one layer, so now I can tap to transform. I'm going to turn snapping and magnetics off so we can transform it freehand. And I'm just going to move these around so that they fit inside these circles and line up with the stems. And then because this is a sketch layer, I'm fine with duplicating and transforming these. You'll see if I duplicate this and then turn it round, you'll see this starts to get fuzzier and fuzzier the more times we duplicate and transform it. And that's not something we'd want in our final artwork, but for a sketch layer, that's fine. So I'm fine with duplicating these multiple times. So all I'm going to do is go around and place one of these in each one of the smaller circles here. So I'll speed up and whiz through that part. You could also obviously draw all of these in freehand if you want to. There's no need to use a stamp brush to do all of these. I just like to use the stamp brushes because I like the uniformity. Obviously you can merge these down as you go so that you don't run out of layers, or what you can also do is do them all on one layer, and then with your select tool you could just cut them and move them around that way. So I think for this one I'm gonna stick with just using the same leaf shapes as I've drawn here on the template, but if you wanted to experiment with other leaf shapes, you could kind of do things a bit more wavy like that. You could do kind of like teardrop shapes, you could do wavy leaves like this. So there's all kinds of different leaf shapes you could draw. I'm going to stick with these, so I'm not going to bother redrawing those. So what we need to do now is to transform this to the other parts of the canvas. So I'm going to merge all of these flowery bits down with the sketch diamond, not with the trailing floral template. So I'm going to merge those down there, and then I'm going to duplicate this layer. I'm going to tap to transform, put snapping and magnetics on, and then I'm going to move it up and over to the left until that snaps into place there. You've got orange lines crossing in the middle. You've also got the orange lines around the outside of the canvas and crossing up there. That way you know it's in exactly the right place. If you're using this canvas template as well, you'll also see that your diamonds line up on top of each other too. And these parts of the pattern are now filled in by repeating what's down here. So we're going to do that into each of the other corners. So we go back down to the bottom sketch diamond layer, duplicate this one, drag it up and over to the right, snap it into place, duplicate the bottom layer again and bring that and snap it down to the left, and duplicate the bottom layer again and drag it down and snap this down to the right. And then that's all of our floral motifs added on there. So I'm going to turn the pattern group on now, and this is where we'll draw all of our black motifs. So anything that's a black dotted line, a flower inside a black circle, this is all going to go in this pattern group. So we can turn off this pattern layer here, add a layer above it, and for this particular template, so this is the trailing floral number 1 template, my first stroke that I'm going to make is going to be starting up here in the middle of this flower, coming down here and then crossing over this line here. So I'm going to use a green colour and I'll use my tracing crayon. So on this one we're going to start here, come down, and we can actually end behind this flower here because the join in this stem will be hidden. So following this down, this finishes here and then joins on with this part, which will be brought down to here. So this curve here is actually the same as this curve here. So if we bring this down to there, we'll then have this in place to be able to line it up with. I'm just going to show you that because it'll make much more sense if I do it rather than saying it. So on this layer here that we've just got our stem on, I'm going to put a mark on this corner here and this corner here. I'm going to duplicate it, tap to transform, and we're going to snap it down into this corner the same as we did with our sketch layer just a moment ago. So we bring this down here and bring it down to there. And then we've got this line in place, so we can carry on our bottom stem layer. We can pick up here and then join it up down here. So this bit doesn't need to be too precise because this will be hidden behind this flower. So we just bring this down and we can easily merge that in, and then that's going to be a nice seamless join there. So the next thing I would draw in on this pattern is this line here, which starts there, curves down, and then crosses over this line here, which is the same as crossing up there. So we'll draw this in to there and then transform it up to there and use that to merge it back in. So now we're going to start up here, making sure that we're on the bottom one. You could hide the duplicated layer at this point. So make sure you're on the original bottom one. Start under this flower and we'll just trace this down there and just cross over that line. We've already got these marks in the corners, so what we want to do is duplicate this bottom layer again, tap to transform, and we're going to move it up and across this time so that we can get that part in there. So I'll move it up and over. And there you go, we can see we've got that part in there now. So go back down to our bottom original working layer, and then we just need to join this part up with there. So there we go. If I turn these two off, we've now got all of the trailing parts put in place. So all of the places where this crosses a seam, they're all in place now, so we can just add the other parts of the pattern in there. You can delete these 2 duplicated layers now, and we can just go ahead and put the rest of the stems in. So I'm going to start with the flowers and put those in. So that part we just did, getting those to join up, that's probably the hardest part of this pattern, and once that's done, it's just a fun game of tracing really. So there's all of the big flower stems put in. The next part is to do the leaves. I'm going to use a thinner brush for this one, and I'm just going to trace over all these leaves like this. And the same with these buds, I'm going to put these on the same layer as well. So I'm just going to start behind there and trace those in like that. So I'm looking for anything that's black to draw in on this layer. As you get more familiar and comfortable with these designs, you can do things like experimenting by adding extra leaves in like this, which could go like that. So that's the thing you can do as you get more familiar and comfortable with these designs and you want to adapt them slightly. It's just to add your own little variations in. So these ones down here in blue, we don't need to draw over those. So there we go. I think that's all of the black parts traced over now. As far as the stems go, I'm sure I'll probably find some that I've missed a bit later on. So the next thing I'm going to do is put the leaves in. So we'll add a layer underneath this one, and I'll use the lighter green to draw in these leaves now. There's one there that I've missed, so we'll put that in on the layer above. Go back underneath and change the colour. And then hopefully that's all of those filled in, and we'll just go ahead and colour drop fill all of these now. And then I'll show you how I fill these little gaps here that you get when you use texture brushes. So duplicate this layer, go up to adjustments, go to Gaussian blur and set a Gaussian blur of 3% on this duplicated layer. Then you can hide it, and then with your select tool in automatic, tap on the layer, adjust the threshold so it's somewhere in between the outside of the shape and this line here that we want to fill. Then tap invert, add a layer above, and tap to fill this layer, and that will knock out all of the gaps on that layer all in one go. You can go around and check if there's any little mistakes or bits where, for example, if you had leaves too close together, it might fill the gap in between them. You can just erase that off this top layer before we merge them down. So I'm going to merge them down with this Gaussian blur one hidden. And then we've got that nice filled edge there. If you want to find out more about that method of filling shapes, then you can check out this video here which goes over how to do that. So that's all of our leaves in now. I'm going to add a layer above the stems and draw the flower middles in. I think I'll change the background colour to this light green colour, and to start off with I'm going to draw the flower middles in red, but I'm probably going to make these multicoloured afterwards. So let's just draw these all in one colour to start with. So to draw a circle, I'm just going to trace over this, hold, tap the screen and then lift off my pen, and that will give me a nice perfect circle. I'm going to do that for all of these ones. So draw, hold, touch and lift up. So remember here we're just drawing over the ones that have the black middles and the black dots around the outside of them. We wouldn't draw this one in here because we've already drawn it up there. So that's all of those drawn in. So we'll again colour fill those. So now I'm going to work on the petals for these. So we'll add a layer underneath, and I think I'll probably just draw these in white to start with. We might make those coloured later. So I'm just going to trace over petals like this, making sure that I join them up underneath. And if I hide this, you'll see I've got that as a solid shape under there so that I can colour fill that. If you want to make sure that you're joining up under the middle, you can do this bit on a layer above and then just move it back down afterwards. So I'll draw the rest like this, I think. The next thing I'm going to do is the buds. So let's add those above the stems. And I'll probably do these white as well. So I'm going to draw the petals in white first, and then we'll draw this in orange underneath. So underneath these petals now, I'm going to add some red middle parts. And again, just making sure that I join these up so that when we colour fill, we don't get it pouring out all over the place. So that's all of our motifs filled in on this black layer. Everything that's got a black outline around it is now filled in. It's just these pink ones we need to tackle here that go off the edges of the canvas. To do those, we are going to swipe down with 3 fingers and tap copy all. Then we're going to turn our extra group on. Tap on the layer that says extra, swipe down with 3 fingers again and tap paste. And now you've got a flattened copy. If I hide the pattern layer, you've got a flattened copy of everything that we have there. I'm going to duplicate this layer, tap to transform and drag it over there and snap it over to the right. Then this one underneath, tap to transform and we'll drag that over there and snap it onto the left there. Then you can pinch to merge these two together, and what we need to put in here is our pink motifs. So it's just these parts here is all we need to draw. It would be useful if we could see how to merge this down with this stem. To do that, it's this part up here. So we could duplicate this layer, tap to transform and drag it halfway down and halfway across like that. And then we've got this part of the stem brought down there. That part's blue now, but don't worry about that. It's still the pink part underneath. So we can add a layer above this. You can merge these two together at this point. So on this layer that I've added above, I'm going to go and trace these stems in now. So using my tracing crayon and the darker green, I'm just going to draw those in the same as we did with these ones. And then we'll add the leaves underneath. So that's those pink motifs done now. So we can hide our extra layer again, go back to our pattern, and this is where we would put any shading or colour changes that we wanted to make. You can also turn the sketch off at this point and that will help you get a better idea of your colours you've got going on. So I'm going to alpha lock all of these layers so that I can fill them with different colours and experiment and see what I like. And I think I'm just going to stick with the orange for the daisy middles and then the pink, the little buds. One last little step I'm going to do on this layer is to blend in the petals in with the stems. So on my petals layer, I'm going to add a layer above it, make it a clipping mask, and I'm going to use a soft brush. I'll just use the soft blend brush here. And with this same green colour, I'm just going to touch that onto there to blend those stems out a little bit. And then I'm going to work on the shading. So I'm going to start with the leaves. I'll add a layer above those, clip it down, and I'm going to make this layer Colour Burn 40. I'm going to grab a mid-grey by double tapping here. And I'm going to use my gradient texture large. And I'm just going to add a bit of that to the bottoms of these leaves like this. And what Colour Burn does is it increases the saturation of what's underneath based on what's above it. So we're drawing with this grey. It's not going to alter the colour because it's a neutral colour, it's just grey, but it will just bring up the saturation and intensity of what's underneath. And then go back down to the leaves layer, add another layer above that. I'm going to make this one Colour Dodge. We'll try 40%. I might want to make this a little bit lighter. And then we're going to do the same, just putting a bit of lighter colour onto the edges of those leaves like that. And this kind of works in the opposite effect. So when I'm working, I like to use Colour Burn and Colour Dodge to do my shading, my highlights and my shadows, both because I like the way it lightens and darkens, but also if I want to change the colours, I don't have to redo the shading or recolour the shading. These leaves underneath, if I wanted to make them blue, I can just fill that layer with blue and that shading will still apply and still work. I do want to keep these green, so we'll leave it that way. And just to add a little bit more texture on those, on each of these layers, the Colour Dodge and the Colour Burn, with this speckles brush, I'm just going to scribble over all of that, and that's going to put these extra flecks of texture on there. So there you go, on the lighter bits you get a few extra bits of dark, and on the darker bits you get a few extra bits of light. So the next part to do is the stem, so we'll add a layer above that, make it a clipping mask and colour burn 40%, which is what I'm going to do for all of these shading textures, and I'll use the gradient texture small, still the grey colour, and I'm going to put a bit of the shading coming out from underneath all of the leaves here, sorry, underneath all of these petals. And then to add just a general bit of texture to these, I'm going to go onto the gradient texture large, make that nice and big, and just scribble lightly over some of this layer, and you'll see that I'll put just a little bit of texture on there. And then I'm going to add a layer in between those again. We'll make this colour dodge 40%, and again we'll just give a light scribble over there, over all the stems, just to add a little bit of variation in texture there. Then over these buds, we'll do the same again, add a layer, clipping mask, colour burn 40, and I'll just make these, that brush is probably a bit too big, make these a little bit darker, just coming out from underneath the petals there. And that also adds that nice texture in there too. And we'll go down to the buds again, add a layer, make this one colour dodge 40%. And we'll just add a bit of the lighter colour onto the tops of those buds there. You can see these are really starting to come alive with that texture now. Here we go, hopefully that's all of those done. Now just the daisy middles to do. So we'll add a layer above those, clip it down, colour burn 40. And just add a bit of darkness to some of these middle parts. Then add a layer in between, make this one colour dodge 40. You can experiment with the different opacities. If you want yours like more intense, you could go with a higher opacity. If you want it more subtle, then go with a lower opacity. And I'm just going to grab that speckles brush and scribble over all of these ones as well, on each of these colour burn or colour dodge layers. So I'll just give it a scribble over there. And there you go, you can see you've got those nice multiple textures on there. And we'll just do that on the two layers that are over the pink as well. The only parts where we haven't added any texture is these white petals, and that's because colour burn doesn't have any effect on pure black or pure white, and neither does colour dodge. So if we want to put shading onto the white, we are going to actually have to pick a colour to do that. So I think I'm going to colour pick the background here, even though I've already got it in my swatches. I'm going to go to the classic palette, and I'm just going to get a lighter version of that, and I'll add a layer above the petals, clip that down. I'm going to leave this in normal blend mode, and with a much smaller brush I'm just going to put a little bit of texture down there onto the leaves, the petals, just to add a little bit of interest on them. If you made your petals like a different colour from white, you could use that same colour burn, colour dodge method with the grey to add the shading on those. And then I will also scribble over this layer with the speckles. You can see we've got a little bit of variation there on these as well to match the rest now. And I'm going to repeat that on the buds petals as well. So all of this pattern group is now completed, so we can hide that one and just finish the shading on these leaves here in our extra group. So I'm going to hide that part and that part, and then I'll just repeat the shading in this group. Magic. So now we can build out our pattern tile here in Procreate. So I'm going to duplicate this extra layer. If you don't have enough spare layers to duplicate whole groups, I'll show you how to work around for that in just a second. So I'm going to delete those two at the bottom that we don't need, and I'm going to tap and I'm going to flatten that layer, and then hide the one underneath and hide that one. If you don't have enough spare layers to duplicate a whole group, what you can do is hide the background colour, turn your layer group on, swipe down with 3 fingers, tap copy all, come up to the top here, swipe down again, tap paste, and then you only need that 1 extra layer to duplicate that instead of duplicating, you know, possibly 20 layers there. So now we can hide this pattern layer, and we're just working with these 2 up here. Let's hide this one for a moment and turn this extra layer on. We need to put this back onto the edges of the canvas. So to do that, we put a mark on each of the corners like we did with the stems when we were moving those. Just grab any old brush to do this and put a mark into each of the corners like that. Turn the background layer on. Then we duplicate this layer, move this across, and although we're cutting this layer in half, we've still got all of those in layers there in that group to go back to if we need to do some editing. So this one here, we can drag this one over to this side, making sure that these are snapped properly onto the edges. Then you can merge those 2 together and erase those marks in the middle. And now this, if I turn the sketch on, is on the edges here where those pink bits should be. So now we can turn this flattened pattern group on and we can merge these 2 layers together. This doesn't cross over at any part of this, so it doesn't matter if it's on top or below in this pattern, so we can just merge those down together. And then we've already got the marks on the corners there, so we don't need to draw any extra on for this bit. We've got everything else hidden, and we can duplicate this layer, bring it up and over to the left, making sure it's snapped into place there. Duplicate it again, bring it over there to the right. Duplicate this bottom one again and bring it down to the bottom left, always checking that you've got those orange lines there. And then bring that one over. And that is all of the pattern tile put in place now. What we need to do is erase the marks and also make sure we've got everything in the right layer order. So for this particular pattern, there aren't any problems with things overlapping and stems being on top of flowers. So we can actually just merge these top 4 layers together. We can erase these bits in the middle there, and then on the bottom layer, erase those bits in the corners. And that is our pattern tile all built out. To make a little preview and test this, we can pinch these 2 together. We can duplicate it, hide the bottom one, so we've got that to go back to. And let's drag this one up to the middle there. You'll see orange lines and it will say 1800 pixels. Then we can duplicate that and bring it over here, snap it into place, pinch those 2 together, duplicate and bring those down. And that is how this pattern is going to look in Repeat. All the brushes I'm using here today, and in fact these are pretty much the only ones I ever use in Procreate anyway, they're all from my Pattern Maker canvas and brush set, which you can also find on Etsy. I'll put links for everything I've used in the description, and you can get 10% off everything in my Etsy store if you're a newsletter subscriber. And just to reassure you, it's a monthly newsletter and I will not be spamming your inbox with any kind of daily or weekly email sequences. Thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial and I can't wait to see your finished patterns over on Instagram. Don't forget to tag me at Rebecca Flaherty so I can see them and share them in my stories. If you've got any questions, let me know in the comments. All the links for everything I've used are in the video description, and if you want to see more videos like this every week, then make sure you're subscribed here on YouTube. And if you're looking for more in-depth courses like how to combine this Procreate pattern making method with a Photoshop smart object based workflow, then you should look me up on Skillshare. If you're not already a Skillshare member, then use the link below and you'll get 1 month for free when you join. Have fun, stay creative, and I will see you next time.